That is one of the movements from a work called I Believe, which is a Holocaust oratorio for today. It's called, written by a local musician, composer, producer, Zane Zallis. And he is also the founder of a music production program at Mighty Mac Studios. He teaches at Miles Mac Collegiate in Winnipeg. He has composed, arranged extensively, and produced numerous works for students at Miles Mac. Professionally, he's created and produced music for the Winnipeg Symphony Orchestra, Opera, Canada Symphony, CBC, Rainbow Stage, and many, many more. He's a very busy and energetic man. I'm happy to have him in the studio this morning because there's a very special concert taking place tonight with I Believe. Good morning, Zane.
Good morning, Michael.
Nice to see you. I used to see you all the time at McNally Robinson. Nice to have you here in the studio, so welcome.
Thank you very much for having me.
And it's an exciting weekend for you, that's for sure.
It is.
Before we dig into all that, it's a lot to talk about. Just tell the audience a little bit about your background in music and what music means to you.
Well, music to me is a way of being, a way of thinking. It's a worldview. It's how you understand things. Just like a scientist would see things through a scientific lens. I see it through that also, but the artistic lens is an enlarging lens. It's an embracing lens. And I've been with it since day one as a boy, taking the fork and spoons and beating the cups and plates when my parents finally put me into accordion lessons. Accordion since 5 years old. And then, went the route to guitar and jazz. I started playing out and making my first taste of money in my hands for playing. I was at 11. I think I did some radio work at 9 and recording studio by 17 and piano and Bach, jazz, improvising since day one. Mm-hmm. Since day one, composing since probably late elementary, but improvising since day one. So I feel as comfortable standing in front of a symphony orchestra as I do strapping on an accordion and playing a Eastern European polka of some sort.
Should have asked you to bring the accordion this
that
morning next time.
That would have been fun. Ever hear Inagata de Vita on accordion?
But that's not in I Believe, I don't think.
No,
so.
Not at all. But that gives you an idea of the eclecticism of the background. To me, it's like food, very much like food. There's this beautiful buffet of the food around the world and how we prepare it and how we respect it or how we don't, with fast food and commodification and so on and so forth. I think music has the same thing. We should keep our mind really open to this. And I think that those aspects of my upbringing have definitely influenced the way I compose with regard and respect for a host of styles. So
tell me about I Believe. It's a work I think you invested a lot of your soul and a lot of your energy and a lot of your time into. Tell me about the genesis of I Believe, when it all began.
Well, the story goes something like this. Janice Philman, who sat on the board at the University of Manitoba with the Arthur V. Morrill Center for Peace and Justice, was being developed at the time, and they wanted a gala event. Janice knows me, and we're friends and so on. So she called me and said, "How would you like to be involved with this gala event?" And I said, "Sure, sounds interesting. What is this new faculty, if you want to call it, or school of study?" So I attended the board meeting, and we all met around. And I guess in the end, I became the creator-producer of a gala event for the opening of this Center for Peace and Justice Studies. I was handed a book written by Samantha Power, who I believe is now the UN ambassador for the States, Problem from Hell. It was a study of 20th century genocide. Because I wasn't sure what do you write? We had the guests, performers. We had throat singers from up north. We had a rapper. We had string section. We had choirs. We had everything else. But I thought an original piece was needed. What do you write for a Center for Peace and Justice, right? And at that time, only 8 or 9 in the world that were granting PhDs in this area. So, U of M was at the forefront of this. Anyway, after reading and thinking and so on and so forth, I actually focused on Kristallnacht. And I wrote a piece called I Believe. It was about 12 minutes, in overture style and so on. From there, I really reflected deeply. I was taken by the readings and quite disturbed. So the only way I can explain it, Michael, inaccurately, is the compulsion to write this. I was compelled to write something that I thought was truly meaningful and would truly bring attention to these things that were necessary about humanity for us to arrive at that intersection. You're going to hear me say this a lot. I'm a big believer in it. Arrive at that intersection where the emotions, the intellect, and the whole being reflects on who we are, what we are, and how we need to reconcile with each other, how we live on this planet. Far, in my estimation at the time, even way back when, far more important than the latest software that had to come out for some new app or whatever it was at the time. So I decided to write I Believe. I put aside all my other producing, whatever I was doing in the recording studio, my professional productions, everything. I just literally stopped everything, except maybe the 1 or 2 or 3 shows I still have to do, and dedicated the next 5 years to study, interviews, research. Was at the U.S. Holocaust Museum, was in Dachau a couple of times. I'm also the artistic director of a festival in Austria. This is our 10th anniversary. The reason I tell you that is because while I was there, I was also doing research on I Believe in Austria. So I was also interviewing young people whose curriculum in schools have to deal with the Holocaust and have to do with all these aspects of what happened in that area of the world at that time. It's actually in their curriculum. Was a guest speaker at the International Holocaust Conference in Jerusalem, which opened my eyes, ears, heart, and soul. I met a lot of interesting people there and have now, in my estimation, created like a lifelong friendships and connections. And over those 5 years, it resulted in the world premiere of I Believe in 2009 with the WSO.
Mm-hmm. And that's the recording.
And that's what you heard. And it's a live recording, too. That's not a studio recording. That was the show.
Alexander Micklethwaite conducting the WSO. So you did that with the Winnipeg Symphony Orchestra. It's also been performed, sold-out performances in New York. It's been performed in Austria as well.
Yeah. And Stuttgart. That was quite moving. Mm-hmm. And just recently, a couple of weeks ago, we've had interest from Warsaw and Lodz in Poland too. So it seems to be moving forward, and the common response to I Believe has been, and this is after listening to it. There's actually 2. Excuse me, I'm going to backtrack just a little bit. When you first say, hey, by the way, I wrote an oratorio about the Holocaust, come on and listen to it. It doesn't take too much to sit back and go, yeah, sure, oh my, like, what's this going to be about? And after they witness it, it is, for many people, a transformative experience. As I shared with you earlier and before, the orchestra members have stopped to thank me for writing the piece. New York, Toronto, Stuttgart, wherever they are. It seems to grasp them, makes them think, places them really in an uncomfortable position in terms of reconciling how do they feel about this as being a human being, what other humans did to other humans. People always say, oh, they're monsters. What they did was monstrous. But really, it is testimony to the range of human behavior, from heinous to sublime. And I think that needs to be addressed, and I think the arts and music, words and music specifically in this case, bring it to the forefront in a manner that textbooks can't. Dialogue in an intellectual way works to some degree, but it doesn't bring the people to the table right off the bat, and places the percipient, the listener, beyond themselves, right? It takes you out of the equation. You start sensing that you're part of something a little bigger, and I think that's really important, especially regarding our youth. Especially regarding our youth.
I'm in the studio with Zane Zallis. He is the composer of a work called I Believe, an oratorio that is going to be performed tonight. And we'll give you more details in a second. Now, Zane, you've gone back to school, and that's this is kind of how we brings us back to the performance tonight. It takes place at the Crescent Fort Rouge United Church on Wardlaw tonight at 8 p.m. And where can you get tickets?
You can get them at the door if you wish.
Get them at the door.
Or McNally.
Or McNally Robinson. Now, you've gone back to school, and this is part of your creative thesis for your Master's of Education. So,
what does that mean?
It's kind of interesting, that it's a piece you wrote a little while back. It's taken on a life of its own.
Yes.
And now here it is kind of your calling card, in a sense, for your Master's thesis.
Yes, it has become that way, Michael. There's actually 2 parts to it. You're going to get a retrospective study of I Believe. And then tonight we unveil a new movement, a singular movement, from the extended work of, I believe, so to speak. It's called Nostos, which is, I hesitate to use the word sequel, but the next chapter in this book, because this takes you to the end of World War II. And Nostos, which is the second large work that I've started, this is a movement from that, which is also part of the thesis. It talks about the journey of reclamation of identity and what happens post-genocidal events or post these horrendous things in life. The idea of a thesis being a creative thesis out of the Faculty of Education at the University of Manitoba at this scale and scope in music has never been done, to my understanding.
Are the advisors going to be there?
Yes. Oh, yeah. No, this is official.
This is it.
Yeah. I've done the defense already. I've done a lot of research and reading. I've presented a significantly large paper already. I've done the jury the traditional way.
I know you wanted me to read that, and I will one day.
One day, boom! It weighs a few pounds.
My 500-page novel. I'm going to put next to the bed. And read.
Yeah. Well, you know what it is. Well, because you know what it is. It goes like this. I love physics. I love math. I love the search. I love the discovery. But what I'm sensing, because this is the educator part of me, I've teach high school, but I also taught university for 6 years as sessional too, and as a guest speaker in places, and so on. This drive to technology, as if this is the nirvana for us as human beings, as opposed to sensing the convenience it gives us. It seems like we're trying to make things easier and easier and easier and easier, but we equate easier with better. That's not the case. We know we build our bodies through resistance. We go to the gym and so on. Well, we build our minds with those same conflicts, yet we try to avoid them. So my thinking is that we need to start embracing those aspects of inquiry and research and thinking that place human beings at that confrontation of conflict that you need to reflect and reconcile. And I believe the arts are better situated to that because they enlarge and illuminate totally differently than science, which is more of a precise cause and effect and correlations. So science is phenomenal at breaking things down and understanding the parts, which I want, by the way. In the natural world, I would never not. I want my doctor to know these things. I want my surgeon to be certified in these things. But once we get past that realm, we get into how we relate. What are the meanings of these big pictures? And I think the arts service that far more effectively. And it's not about answers. We seem to always want answers in life, precision and so on. But it's about the myriad answers that exist, the multiple aspects of understanding that could be applied to a particular situation. Think of the conflicts, around the world. Never mind, I was going to say Middle East, but think around the world. What the arts do is present, if it's done, I hesitate to say the word right, so I'll use effectively. It gives you multiple possibilities. It gives you multiple ways of looking at things. And it truly does place the percipient at the nexus of emotion and reflection. And I think that's where human beings have to reside once you get past the technical and the latest iteration of the iPhone, and so on and so forth. And that's what my argument was in the papers. Logically, really dissecting the research process. What do we call knowledge? How do we define knowledge? What does it mean to know something? Because that which opens a gate, there's a trade-off for what it limits, right? You open one gate, you're closing something else. Or if a microscope is looking, in a specific spot, the closest spot beside it is not being examined, and you can't assume relationships that way. The arts don't do that. They kind of put it out there in a larger sense, and it gives everyone an opportunity to reflect, and then the dialogue begins. And I think we don't do enough of that. I think we need to do more of that. Just witness in general with our youth and how communities develop, and think about the needed compassion. I know there's a lot of great things going out there. I'm well aware of that. There's a lot of great things that young people are carrying in philanthropy and compassion in neighborhoods. But we really need to get a larger ethos, a sense of us as human beings. And I think that's where the arts are, not just about the latest discovery, which will be probably refuted in 2 years with another discovery and so on, which is part of the process. And that's what I've argued.
Yeah, then I think our listeners are learning a lot this morning. They didn't know when they tuned in that they were going to be. So we're just about out of time. I want to be able to get another piece in.
Sure.
Just just give me an idea. What describe the orchestra, describe the singers. How many singers?
Tonight?
How many tonight? Quickly,
Okay.
so we
well,
can get
we're
people.
going chamber, so it's 5 strings piano,
Yeah.
50-something chorus members, 3 soloists, magnificent soloists at the Crescent Rouge Church. The acoustics are stunning. If you've never been there, this is a stunning place to do a show. It's moving. There's a children's chorus, about 12 children. It's a narrative. It's a story. It's difficult to describe, but I encourage you to come and at least give it a shot. And you know, as they say in theater, put yourself in a seat and listen and give it a chance and see
Open
how
your
you
mind,
react.
open your heart, and
You got it.
see what'll happen. So that's I've been talking with Zane Zallis. Again, the concert is tonight at 8 p.m. Crescent Fort Rouge United Church, 525 Wardlaw. Get your tickets at the door, if there's any left, or McNally Robinson in advance. Zane, it's called I Believe. That's an Holocaust Oratorio for today. Been a pleasure chatting with you.
Oh,
and
thank you so much, Michael, for having
I
me.
want to play another work from that. This is one called The Death March. And again, this is from I Believe, Zane Zallis.